Hey everybody, good afternoon, and hopefully everybody's having a great weekend. Well, before we get started with today's topic, I wanted to sort of preface it with the idea of giving things a chance. You know, obviously this video is about power cables. The title should tell you that much. But more specifically, I want to tell you my history with power cables. Now, a few years ago when I had the Budget Audiophile channel and I got gear and reviewed it and so on and so forth, I was of the mind at the time that power cables probably can make a difference, but probably not. More importantly, I thought signal cables mattered more, whether that be speaker cables, RCAs, maybe digital cables, those kinds of things mattered more because they carried the signal, and perhaps different grounding schemes in cables or different conductor quality or manufacturing technique could potentially affect the signal in such a way as to affect the sound. That was kind of my theory, and it sort of still is. And subjective experience tells me that signal cables make a difference. Speaker cables, interconnects, digital cables, all those things. But I never really had much thought about power cables until so a few years ago when I had the Budget Audiophile channel, I ended up with some store credit on Music Direct on their website, and I didn't really have anything I wanted to buy, but one day I got an email saying, oh, our new specials, and it was listing an AudioQuest Energy, I think the X2 or the X3, I forget which one, for like $60 for a meter. And it was like half off basically. And it's like, oh man, that's a great deal. Why don't I just use the store credit and I'll get one and I'll see what this power cable stuff is about. And I want to state when I got it, I used it on a power ramp I had at the time. I can't remember which one, but I want to state that I didn't go into it thinking that it was going to make a difference. Matter of fact, the opposite. So for those detractors that might say, well, it was placebo, right? It had to have been, you thought it was going to be different, so it ended up being different. But that's not the case at all. I went into it thinking, well, I'm not going to hear anything. Those are going to be nothing. But when I plugged it in and used it, it was like, it wasn't night and day. It wasn't revelatory. It's like, oh, God. But there was a noticeable difference. But anyway, let me show you guys what I've been making the last about a year and a half on custom cables. All right, so as you guys can see, we have here two cables. The one I've been making the last couple of years, year and a half roughly, and of course this is a standard power cable. Now the way I've been making these things is I've been using Belden 9497, which is technically speaker wire, but because I've doubled up the gauges to each live and neutral conductor, it can handle the voltage and the amps. And this is just a standard 12 gauge sort of ground wire that you pick up at Home Depot, the kind where the guy cuts it off the foot. For a long time, I was using Marinko plugs, and I like Marinko because they're cheap, they're well made, high quality, but they've been harder to source lately. So I ended up, last couple of cables I made, this one included, I've been buying these Monos Audio. You can pick these up on Amazon. They come in a few different configurations. This is what they call the pure copper version, which is $15 for both. They also make a rhodium one, and I think a silver plated one also. They're actually very nice quality, very well built. The fitment and everything is very nice. They actually kind of are reminiscent of the way Furatech plugs are designed and the way everything kind of goes together. There's a lot. I'm going to include a link down below to a website where they talk about building cables in a few different configurations. I'm using one of those configurations, which basically is a standard kind of power cable. Since this isn't a shielded cable in any way, the way I've got it is, of course, orange is live, black is neutral, and the green is ground. And the live and the neutral are basically just stuck, set next to one another, and then the ground is wrapped around. Some of the cable, one of the styles, one of the designs that they have listed there is where if you have a shielded cable, you connect one end, you combine one end of the shield with the ground on the plug-in side, and and it acts as like a ground drain. This is more of a standard power cable. If we were to cut this thing apart, or any standard IEC power cable like this, it's wired basically like this, more or less. Anyway, let's turn you guys around and I'll talk about what these do in the system. For a long time, I've been using these, and one of the pieces I picked up recently, I bought, there's a shop not too far away, over kind of headed towards New Orleans from where I live, who specialize in kind of vintage gear, and I picked up, very good deal, an Arcam Alpha 8 power amplifier. I picked that up because, like I said, it was a fantastic deal, and I was like, why not? And I've had it a couple of months, and the time I've had it, and it kind of follows along with a lot of Arcam Alpha series products that I've heard over the years. It has very good bass impact and slam, very good articulation, sometimes almost too much bass in a way. And putting this thing in the system, using that to power it, what I hear is I hear a taming of the bass. You could say a reduction or a lightening, but I like to say the word taming because I don't feel that the bass is any less impactful. It's just sort of dialed back just slightly. And while that sounds like a negative, I think the way my system is set up in the room, that's actually a positive, because having the Arcam in there, I almost feel like the room is overpowered, overcharged with bass, and it sort of clouds the rest of the frequency range. And I've noticed it with other components too, not just the Arcam. So this definitely dials it back a little bit, and it also makes the bass seem more textural. But I don't think that's the cable so much as the lightening of the bass. Since that lightening up, it just creates a little more textural information there. Left-right delineation is actually better, tremendously better, quite in fact. I mean, there's almost a smearing when using like a standard cable with it. There's almost a smearing of the left and right, or a blurring of the definition, the separation between the two. Using this, it definitely pops things out separately, left and right. And it makes for a better imaging and slash sound staging. Also, because the bass is a little reduced, it tends to, I've noticed, since I've had this in the system, I've noticed it tends to, since the bass is a little lighter, it tends to make the mid-range more textural and makes it more tonal. And those differences between, like playing a guitar, excuse me, my nose itches. When you play a guitar, sometimes, through certain systems, it kind of sounds monotone in a way, if you think about it. But this definitely shows off, allows the amp to show more of the burnish of those instruments, and of the mid-range in particular. It doesn't really do much for the high frequency. I've always found Arcam Alpha products to sort of be lighter in their, or subdued in the high frequency. Not negatively, but just not as sparkly. What this does, again, I think overall, because of the lightening of the bass, it kind of brings things into more balance. And, worthwhile. That's about it. That's my thoughts, I guess. I feel kind of scatterbrained today. I don't know why. I was moving earlier and I was lifting something up off the ground. It's one of those things where when you go to pick it up, I kind of twisted while I was picking it up. And oh man, I like twisted my back. Thing still hurts. So that's what's on my mind at the moment. But yeah, again, Belden 9497. I've got this set up. This cable altogether cost probably like $25 to build this. The first time I ever made one, I used sheathing to cover the cable, but I actually kind of like the look like it is. I like sort of the homebrew aesthetic. I also like the fact that it kind of is very reminiscent of like Kimber cables, like the PBJ and stuff like that, and kind of the way that it looks. I kind of really like that. I sort of like the way, kind of the aesthetic of it. It's kind of got like a Halloween vibe going on. But anyway, that's about it for now. Stay tuned. We'll have other content coming up. I've got a review I've been wanting to do for a while, but I just haven't for whatever reason. But anyway, stay tuned. Peace out.